And it is on.
Start it.
Yeah. Are we ready?
Time is it? Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming to our presentation on fire and water, overcoming information blind spots to empower tribal climate adaptation. Yay! Yes, thank you for applauding ahead of time. This is, it's a really important topic, and we're glad that you're here to talk with us about it because there's a lot that we need to know about impacts to our fire and to our water, and the potential impacts from wildfire on tribal lands. And if you are an environmental specialist working for your tribe, or you're an agency who's attempting to help tribes, then there's certain data that you need to know to inform your adaptation planning. So let's see, do I have a clicker here? I do. You know, it's funny, you always point it at the screen, but that's not actually where it is. It's over here. Maybe I'm hitting the wrong button. Yes, no, maybe. All right, next slide, please. There we go. That's me in a past life. My hair has changed. But other than that, I am still the same person. I'm Shasta Gaughan. I'm the environmental director for the Paula Band of Mission Indians in San Diego. There is my contact information. Should you want to get in touch with me, ignore the phone number. I don't answer phone calls from numbers I don't recognize because weirdos. But you can always email me or leave me a voice message and I will respond. And also you can find my information on our website. Next. So I'm not going to be talking for very long. You're going to be hearing from my two colleagues here who I will allow to introduce themselves when their time comes. But I wanted to give you a little bit of background on a project that we have been spearheading at Paula since 2016. Yes, 2016. So going on 8 years now. And we call it the Tribal Climate Health Project. And this project has been funded initially by EPA and then in subsequent years after 2016 by a variety of agencies, primarily the Bureau of Indian Affairs, but we've also had money from the National Indian Health Board, who gets money from the Centers for Disease Control. But the whole point of the Tribal Climate Health Project is to provide resources for tribes who are working on climate change adaptation. And in particular, we are interested in the health effects of climate change. Because of course, climate change affects the environment, but it also affects individual and community health. Things like air pollution causing increases in asthma rates, or the exacerbation of existing conditions like COPD, vectors, so different insects or other zoonotic, fancy word for animal-borne diseases that come into our environments that maybe we haven't had to deal with before. So there's also a really important aspect of health that has to do with culture and community. What about mental health? What about the trauma that comes from being continuously affected by water shortages or wildfire risk, or just increases in diseases in your community, a lack of ability to take advantage of traditional practices, to be able to harvest acorns or wild rice, whatever the case may be for your particular community. So with the resources that we provide, we want to have a little bit of a braided system here where we are acknowledging the importance of tribal culture and tribal ecological knowledge, while also providing folks with the data that they need to really inform the adaptation strategies that they undertake for their communities. If we don't know what our water levels are in our aquifers, it's harder to plan for potential water shortages. If we don't know what the extreme temperatures might be 5, 10, 15 years down the road, it's harder to plan for those resources our community members need to keep themselves safe from the impacts of extreme temperatures or climate-related disasters. So what we really want to do is be able to protect cultural practices by providing the data that we need to put together the solutions that are going to keep people safe. Next slide. So I already kind of went over this, our general objectives, and these slides will be available when the conference is over if you want to go over this in more detail. I don't need to get into these particular details except to say that you can always find our information at our website, which is tribalclimatehealth.org. Next. And that's it for me. So I'm going to go upstairs and get some snacks. No. And I want to pass it over to Angie Hacker, my partner in all things climate, and let Angie introduce herself and do the next slides.
All right. Thank you, Shasta. Let's give Shasta a round of applause, because if it were not for Shasta, this program wouldn't exist, as would like 400 other programs that she oversees. She's been a real advocate for tribes across the country. So Tribal Climate Health Project is a national program, and we got started about 8 years ago, like Shasta said, and our goal was to try to prepare tribes for the health and other impacts of climate change, helping you have the capacity internally to adapt. I'm Angie Hacker. I'm the CEO of Prosper Sustainably. I've been working in this tribal space for quite a bit of time, and I love running this program with Shasta, and I love working with tribes. And so some of what I do is to help build capacity for tribes. So basically my job is, and what I'm passionate about, is what can I do from the outside to help you? For those of you working on the inside of communities, how can I possibly help make it easier for you to get through this process? This particular conversation we're having today is on data. How many of you have done an adaptation plan? How many of you found the fact-finding process a little bit difficult? Right, so there's a lot, when you go through the process of doing an adaptation plan, a lot of what we're doing, whoops, there we go. A lot of what we're doing is fact-finding, at least in the beginning, and we're looking for facts wherever we can find them. But this conversation we're going to have about today with NOAA, who I'm going to introduce in a minute here, is we are trying to figure out where are the data gaps? Where is the meaningful information you wish you had when you're out there trying to do an adaptation plan? And what is an adaptation plan? An adaptation plan is for you in your community to decide what's important to protect, to make choices about your limited resources, and to figure out where to put those resources to take as many actions as you can now before things get worse. Right? So as things are worsening in the climate, how do you put your dollars and your time in the right place as early as you can? Well, you know what that means? That means we have to have a relative understanding of your risks and looking across a whole bunch of things. So if you've done an adaptation plan, you know that when we look at climate vulnerabilities, we're basically talking about almost everything we care about changing and potentially being impacted. That's so much information. And so obviously what we're trying to do, when I start this process, and I work with individual tribes, I've ran into several of them in this conference who have come up to me and said, your plan has helped me get dollars. Woo, that's one big goal, right? Sometimes these programs out here with funding, they want you to have a plan in place. And so you need to have your adaptation plan in place in order to implement. So do a plan, great. But ideally, this plan is something that's not just sitting on a shelf. Ideally, it's helping your community make difficult decisions about where to put its resources, what actions to take. And so when I start the process with the community, you know what I'm always doing? I'm starting with listening, right? What does the tribe know? What has it always known? What can it tell me? I sit with the elders, I sit with the departments, I do a survey, I grab all the reports, and you know what? Sometimes there's blind spots. Sometimes there's blind spots in that data. The bane of my existence is I never have complete data, no matter where I look. And I wish I did, because we would make a lot better decisions if we knew everything there was possible to know. And we can't, and we don't. We're gonna do the best we can. So I grab as much information from the tribe that I can. And maybe we're looking at, hey, my stream no longer runs. And I say, okay, do you have a stream gauge? Do you have measurements? Do you know the trend lines? Nope, not always, and that's okay. Can I look to another place to try to supplement that information where the state or the federal government or somebody else has publicly accessible data that can help me overcome that blind spot in the information? And you know what? Not always. So part of what we're trying to do is help inform the data makers so that they can get better information to you. The things that you need to know in order to make good decisions, how can we How can we get the data to you in a more accessible, user-friendly way you can grab, take to your tribal council, make good decisions, and then do the work, implement it, protect your community. So this is all to say we have a tool, and I'm not going to go into a lot of it. It's called the Exposures, Impacts, and Strategies Inventory, which basically was us taking many indicators of all the ways that you might be at risk in your community, from exposures to impacts to population sensitivity, and all the different factors that go into deciding, hey, how severe and likely is a certain vulnerability to us? So we can decide this is the biggest risk versus this versus this. And all this is an Excel spreadsheet right now, but guess what? We got funded and we're turning it into a web-based platform with the California Energy Commission's dollars and Public Health Institute. So hopefully we'll have an actually easy tool for you to use so we can make this data more accessible to you, easier for you to grab all the facts you need across all of these data points. Because this is what it looks like right now, and not everybody loves an Excel document as much as I do. All right, who just threw up in their mouth a little bit? And I'm only going to say a couple of things here about the ways that data is lacking, but in my study of this over the last 8 years, it's lacking in a lot of ways, especially for tribes. And what's true is that when I go looking for data out of publicly accessible places, it's often not at your scale. It's not, it's definitely not at your reservation for the most part. It might be down to the county or maybe a census tract, but the census tract doesn't match your boundary. So there's parameter issues with this data. And it doesn't always have the right temporal scale. Maybe we have data from a well station or something, some water source back in 1972, 20 miles away from you, but I don't have anything baseline, and I definitely don't have enough projections. Like what we kind of need to know is not just what has been or is, but where it's going, right? Because what we're this is a future looking process. How do we act now, knowing how things are going to change? And oftentimes it's not connected to a climate episode. So like smoke, we have a lot of information about PM 2.5, but we don't actually have a good understanding of what happens when a wildfire happens and how it affects our health from smoke. Like that smoke wave data is not that good. If I want to tell your tribal council, here's how bad respiratory illness is going to get as a result of wildfire smoke, I have no way to tell you that. So in our work, we are trying to focus specifically on a couple of really big data gaps that I find in working with tribes from across the country, and then the ones that I consult with directly. Water supply is always a problem, getting access to water supply data. And what I just mentioned, the wildfire-related illness, understanding how health is affected by a wildfire, not just by, directly being burned or having to evacuate, but that smoke issue. And what the point of this is like, I think these are blind spots. I think they're really critical concerns, especially for California tribes. And if I don't make them visible to a tribe, I stay up at night thinking, I missed my window to help that tribe have the window to act. Like if I don't get it right, I'm not advising a tribe correctly. And that tribe doesn't know this big risk is something they should have acted on now. And that's the game here. Blind spots, overcoming them. Let's make sure we're putting our resources where they really are going to count, and let's not miss a risk. Okay. Oh, so this is Emily, and she's with NOAA, and she's helping us with data gaps.
Thank you, Angie. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. I am Emily Wells. I'm a social and decision scientist with Colorado State University. But I work with the NOAA Fire Weather Test Bed, which is a pretty new initiative within NOAA. And I'm just going to give a quick rundown of what we do today, and then specifically what I do as a part of the user needs assessment within the Fire Weather Test Bed. So the Fire Weather Test Bed evaluates new and existing fire weather products and services. We recognize that there are gaps, like Angie mentioned, in terms of what fire-related information agencies are passing along and the extent to which that is useful for end users. So our goal is to bring the fire weather community together to make fire weather information more accessible, useful, and efficient for all end users involved in pre-fire, during fire, and post-fire. So our team engages with end users of this fire weather related information early and often. And we also recognize that this effort is much bigger than NOAA and bigger than the federal government. So we involve local, state, and tribal partners in these conversations to make sure that fire weather needs are met across the board. And in our work and in our team, social science plays a pretty big role. So we're not only looking at the technical features of these fire weather products, but also sort of how social dynamics can, have a role in these products as well. Okay, great. And we want to link research to action. And here you can see a series of 4 models that we've adapted from the public health field, actually. And in that top quadrant, model A, you can see that information is often pushed from producers of that information to users. So in this case, that might look like agencies passing along information to users. And that information may or may not really be useful to those users. Alternatively, in model B, users often have to pull information from producers. So from maybe, again, agencies, for example. That information might be helpful to an extent, but it might not perfectly capture their needs. In model C, you can see that there's more direct interactions that improve information exchange between producers and users so that they can learn from and about one another. And this can help facilitate, more successful information exchange and knowledge about what users are sort of looking for from these information sources. But then finally, Model D takes this collaborative nature a step farther, and you can see that there are integrated efforts that are facilitated between producers and users, known as knowledge translation platforms. And that's where our team, the Fire Weather Testbed, comes into play. So we act as a sort of third party that facilitates engagement with both producers and users of fire weather related information. And so at the testbed, we identify users and evaluate their needs. We also engage with this image got a little messed up, with product and service developers to understand the technical constraints, capabilities, and workflows that they're working with. And we use those interactions with both producers and users to create what we call fire weather product or service evaluations, which are sort of like experiments where we'll bring people in to our office or virtually to learn about and test a fire weather technology or information source or tool. And the users, so those are people that are generally out in more operational field settings, will provide feedback on if and how the tool was useful. And our team synthesizes that information, hands it to developers, and then from there, developers can improve their tool so that it's more accessible, useful, effective for the end users. So specifically, I am on the user needs assessment team of this. So my role as a social scientist and with my colleague who's a meteorologist, we identify users and evaluate their needs in a somewhat strategic capacity. And based on these needs, we can help shape what products and tools we're bringing in to evaluate in the test bed and what questions we're asking during those experiments so that we can see if and how end user needs, again, in that more operational capacity, are being met by these tools produced by NOAA and other fire weather entities. So we feel that this user needs assessment piece of our work is critical in that it helps us understand and recognize the human behavioral and decision-making patterns across varied contexts and across the fire management process. We can help identify challenges, barriers, and opportunities for a diverse range of end users, again, from local, state, federal, and tribal organizations across the fire management cycle. And we then learn what is and what would be useful to those users, report that back to the user community, the researchers, and in turn help drive the fire weather research agenda. We do this through multiple approaches, the first being what we call the traditional formal academic approach. So that involves more, standard research, interviews, focus groups, that type of thing. We also value learning by doing, which is our more relationship-oriented line of work, where we really try to spend time in the field or doing site visits, shadowing, engaging in experiential learning and observational learning to understand what needs are in more of a natural environment and context. And from there, the findings from method 1 and method 2 help drive what we really feel should be brought into the test bed. So this is a transdisciplinary process where we also help guide the questions that are asked in order to make sure that these new emergent fire weather products are actually addressing needs that exist in the field. So along with the Tribal Climate Health Project, we conducted semi-structured interviews with their tribal advisor board. So this is 10 members of their board, their environmental professionals that represented 10 California-based tribes. These were remote, semi-structured interviews, and the Tribal Climate Health Project is considered the record holder of all of this data. So the audio files as well as the accompanying transcripts. We did receive IRB human subjects research approval through Colorado State University, and also asked each tribal member if their tribe had a specific policy for us to follow as well. And the questions during these conversations included things like, where do you go for climate and weather information? When looking at an information source online, what are you looking for? What's important to you? What indicators really matter to you? And then in the case of information that might be missing or inadequate, what information would help you most? And how should it be presented by agencies to support your tribe and to support your work? And then finally, what information do you use or need to know to determine whether your climate adaptation or planning strategy is working? So following these interviews, we sent each participant an interview summary. So this was just a summary of the conversation to make sure that they could add things that may not have come up during the conversation. They could identify culturally sensitive information. They could, just provide any sort of feedback for more of an iterative conversation on what their climate and weather information needs are. And we're now in the process of qualitatively coding those interview transcripts. And I think that is all for me. On to the activity.
Thanks, Emily. So NOAA, isn't it great that NOAA wants to hear what tribes need to better inform these tools so you have better access to information that you don't have to build yourself, and ideally it's built in a way that's user-friendly enough for you to actually use to make decisions. So this is, we're going to do an activity now that's actually an extension of that. So Emily just told you about some interviews we did. Those were 90-minute long interviews with 10 or so tribes. Right now we're going to do super lightning speed, get a little bit of input from you, specifically on fire and water data. Because all of you, if you're in the western region of the United States, probably have some water and fire things to think about, and you might benefit from having some additional data and information. Emily, would you mind passing? We're going to do 2 at each table. So sorry to make you move and stuff. I didn't realize we were going to be this popular. We're going to do 2 groups at each table. So group up. It can be more than 3, even though it says 3, not just triads. And we have a worksheet we're going to walk through, which I should have kept one of. What the worksheet is, hang on, before you start chatting, let me just explain what we're doing. We're going to spend 15 minutes in a triad, and I want you guys, it's pretty easy. You go through the worksheet, and the worksheet has a bunch of indicators on it, data sets, types of data. Hang on, everybody. Let's just get through this piece real quick, and then you can chat. So what I want you to do is walk through the list of data sets, and all you're going to do is, as a group, check the things that you think are a high priority to your tribe. And don't check all of them. Don't cheat. Check the things that you really think would help you make a decision about wildfire and water. And we're talking about water. We're talking specifically about water supply, aquifer recharge, groundwater, stream levels, that kind of thing, okay? We're going to put up the QR code too, because this worksheet comes with hyperlinks, and if you wanted to go plugging in and see what these data sets really are about, then we welcome you to do that. So 15 minutes as a group, all you're doing is checking. If you want to make notes about what you like or don't like about these data sets, what you wish was better about them, please do. And we're going to collect those afterwards, and then we're going to have a discussion. All right, go.
No, you gotta give it to me. I have the one that's on.
Yeah.
Turn this off, actually.
Just to be clear, you are allowed to write on these handouts. Please write on the handouts, and then we're going to collect them from you. And if you want a copy, just scan the QR code. It will have all the hyperlinks on our website.
All right, my friends, we have 1 minute left for this part, and then we're going to go into discussion. 1 minute. Okay. All right, everybody. Awesome work. Let's come back together, yeah? I will start singing if I have to make everyone stop talking. Ba-ba-dum. Okay. We're doing karaoke here. All right, my friends. So excited about data. So excited. Oh, okay, claps. Okay, I'm just gonna start talking, and eventually everyone will stop being so social. Woo! All right, you guys, we got to do a little group discussion before I let you out of here because you just did some really good brain work, and I'm so proud. That was really good. You guys really worked together to try to think this through. Please make sure you're going to leave those worksheets with us, okay, because we would like to have your input. But I want to do a little lightning round and hear a little taste of what you talked about. All right, everybody. So let's be courteous to the people who are going to share, because I really would like to hear from those people who have a priority. What came up for you as a top data set priority? One on this list, what came up for you as something that was like a really high priority? Like, yeah, I really wish I had that to make decisions for my community about wildfire or water supply risk. Can anybody name one that came up for them as a really high priority?
Yeah, don't take away their surveys yet. Yeah, just leave them on the table and we'll pick them up when we're done. Lori's a little too excited about it. So yeah, let's don't make me call on you, because y'all who know me know that I will. But I want to see you. You can have a hand or you can just shout out. Go ahead. Let me bring you the microphone. Yes, the people online.
Your first two listed ones seem to be the most useful: the likelihood of fire and the vulnerable populations.
Can you tell us who you are?
Oh, Mike Shiver with Powder Valley Track. I use the Cal OES website, and that shows likelihood, but these even look even better.
All right, who else concurs that knowing the likelihood of fire is important for your adaptation planning? Yes. Really? I'm surprised not to see every hand in the room go up. Maybe I should say, who here is not worried about fire? That's kind of what I thought. Okay, who else? Who wants to volunteer about what your group saw as a top priority?
There was a comment on here about emergency room visits based on asthma, and asthma is a leading cause of absenteeism in school. So having, data related to that, I think is important. Vulnerable populations like children and older adults. Maybe then, schools could have specific needs. I want to know about the AQI when it's at this point, and then get specific information related to them. So
Tell us who you are and where you're from.
Blue Lake Rancheria, Humboldt County.
Woo, Humboldt. I went to school at HSU, which is probably a surprise to no one.
So, and think about that one. So this is a good data set. And you know what else? It's only by county. Does that help you? Or is that sort of less meaningful than it should be if it was just about your tribe? So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. And also it's historical, which is great, and baseline, which is great. Are there projections? Nope. So helping your tribe make decisions about where to put its resources might mean, hey, asthma rates are going to double by X year. And this is a really big deal. We need to put some resource on.
Yes, I bow to the inimitable Sarah Ryan.
I wanted to say I really like the Public Health Institute's environmental health data.
Yeah.
It is really easy to read. Yeah, we got some awesome info out of them regarding extreme heat events, and found that in Lake County I think we are 2 times the the state average for emergency room visits for during extreme heat events, and the county's hazard mitigation plan had put that as a low priority issue because they hadn't really looked at the data. So I totally agree with this approach of looking at environmental health data and using that to frame your programs, because you might not even know you have a problem. And a lot of cases, we still can't figure out the health impacts. Like, we look at cyanotoxin hits and emergency room visits, and it's almost an inverse relationship. There's fewer people going when we have the highest toxin levels. Like, that's been our research. But yeah, it's good stuff. Thank you.
Stay tuned. Tribal Extreme Heat Tool coming out from the Healthy Places Index put on by Public Health Institute and Tribal Climate Health Project. Yay.
All right, who else wants to volunteer their hot top data priority? Wait.
I'm gonna add a water one to the mix. I said I'm biased, but I said stream flow percentage. It's a very good indicator of where we are at regarding climate, water quality, how much water is going to be provided to the different rancherias and reservations. So I think that's very important to be considered. Oh, and I'm Eva from Kashaya.
Thank you. And I'll
Yay,
say we have
Prashant.
indicators here on water supply, but guess what? Go there and you will not find anything that relevant to you. So that's what we're talking about. And like, so it's there, but a stream 20 miles away, or ground supply, but also 20 miles away and very old. So like, for me, water shortages are coming and we don't know how bad or how soon. Okay.
Yeah, but also bearing in mind that we know how tough it is for tribes to be put in a position of having to share their water data when you don't necessarily want to make that information public.
This is a little off topic, but I am using NOAA climate data, past climate data right now for a plan I'm writing. And I went on there the other day and I noticed that the whole website is down because it's hosted out of the NOAA Asheville office. And so I do think, it's kind of ironic that climate data would be prone to climate disasters. And so that's kind of what I was thinking about as I was on there. It's like, we have to make this data climate resilient too, and just more universally accessible. Because now I'm like behind on the plan because I can't access any of that data. So, and I don't know, I'm assuming there's a lot of information that's hosted on that Asheville server. That's what it sounded like from the error message that came on my screen.
Yeah,
So-
I didn't realize that. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
January 21st, we can't access that stuff anymore.
You know what? Well, actually, tell us who you are and where you're from.
My name is Maris. I work for DUDEC, which is an environmental consulting firm. Work with a couple different tribes who are here today.
Can I switch up our question? Okay, because I also went around and asked you guys to think about other data sets that you wish you had access to, because we're just telling you the ones we know of and there's actual data for that you can maybe go look for. Whether or not it's that good, that's for you to decide. What other data sets do you wish you had for wildfire and water supply related risks? Anybody come up with something that we didn't? I know you guys did back there. I heard you. And so to clarify, we don't think we have the whole universe of knowledge at our fingertips. I'm sure you're making decisions and you wish you knew some stuff. What could we help you with?
I'm Marcos Ramos from the USDA Rural Development. I'm not with the tribe, but I help a lot of tribes. And in our helping, I would say like fire flow accessibility is a big issue. So if there was a way to kind of project out, in a fire situation, how much water does this community need? Or we can kind of do that, with engineering support. But I think that that's a lack, especially, readily available data. I don't know how often you guys do engineering reports, but they're expensive these days. So if there was a way to get that data for free without having to consult a firm to provide that data, and come up with that number of gallons needed for, 10 hours or whatever the average fire, time is in that area, would be definitely helpful in our aspect. Because, when we're trying to, rebuild drinking water storage, we want to account for that fire flow need in the case of emergency. And it's hard to do when, most tribes are already lacking the capacity to do these things on their own, and then making them, go out and get it from another source that costs, lots of money. So.
It's such a good one. You called it Fire Flow. Is that the little cute nickname you gave it? I liked it. Yeah, I think that's really good.
Fire truck demands, 1,000 gallons a minute, right? And so if you have a 10-hour, fire happening, or there's some severe disaster,
Yeah.
and you got a 200,000 gallon tank, and people are also using water themselves, that's not
Yeah.
going to last long, right? So you need to
Yeah.
have, what would make you resilient in that situation. So I think that would be a good, indicator.
That's great. I mean, and that is what we're trying to do here is figure out how to keep you all from having to run your own expensive analysis. Like most of you, to understand what your water security situation is going to look like in the future, have to run a really expensive hydrological analysis, and it's complicated. And the question I have is like, well, can the state give you some proxy for that, some indicator, some general ballpark of how things are going so that you don't have to spend $100,000 each tribe to figure it out?
So we have about 3 minutes before we have to, clear the room for the next thing. So if anybody has any particular resources or points of view or ideas that they want to share, now is your time, or answer any of the other questions that we have up on the screen. My question is, after holding the mic for him, is, did anybody ever wonder why Bob Barker had a microphone but the contestants don't? Yeah, I don't get that. But there's people online.
Can you give us any more sneak peeks on that the EISI tool? I'm
I love
super thrilled.
you.
Yeah.
Aw. We could pull that back up. And why don't you hang around and I will talk your little ear off about it. It's online. It's on our website, tribalclimatehealth.org. It's very easy to find from that website, and it's an easy free download. You just download the Excel tool. And it's got exposure. You can look at all the indicators for all the 5 exposures we talk about, secondary exposures, all the impacts. It has a lot in it, and I'm happy. Anybody who would like to be walked through how to use it, please do. The idea is that it shortcuts your process from having to start from scratch. Like, what is this information I should be looking for, and where is it? At least start here.
And Sarah, we, as Angie mentioned before, we're trying to make it a little bit more friendly by putting it in a web-based interface, because Excel is my kryptonite. And when Angie finished it and I looked at it, I still haven't recovered. It took 10 years off my life. And, but I mean, it is an incredibly useful tool. You just gotta, it's very heavy with lots of stuff. So hopefully we can get the funding we need to continue to expand the ability to do this as more of a drop-down menu kind of a thing, and then have it populate data that's going to be specific to your community, or at least as focused as we can get on the area of concern for you. Sometimes that's just going to be at the county level, census level. Very rarely is it at the reservation level.
Let's do one more comment over here, and then we'll
Yeah.
close out.
Give her the mic.
As you develop the interactive tool, are you going to make the code that is behind the guts of that interactive tool open and accessible on something like GitHub?
No, it's ours forever.
I mean,
No,
that's
so-
a real thing that people do.
Do you want it to be, you mean like open source?
I think Public Health Institute's California Healthy Places Index already is open source, but we are not the coders, thank God. But I will confirm.
But that's a really good thing to keep in mind. But with our last minute here, I just want to give a shout out to the fact that tribal knowledge and tribal data is often used without tribal permission. So we want to make sure that it is clear that for us at the Tribal Climate Health Project, we very much want to make sure that we are following your data protocols. So if you're sharing anything with us, then we are not going to use that data without your permission, because that's the way it should be. And so that's partly what that question is best practices around managing information. So I am very aware of that as a tribal environmental director, and we are aware of that for you as well. So we're not going to take anything from you or even that you've given us today and use it without your permission.
Can I say
So-
one last
Yes,
closing thing, which
please.
is just thank you for your input. It's only through understanding what your needs are can folks like NOAA and us at the Tribal Climate Health Project build something that's useful and hopefully valuable for you. We're actually going to take this kind of information, write a white paper, and send it to all the agencies in California, because we want them to understand where the data gaps are too. And ideally, we make this easier for you. And then you get to the work. You get to the work of protecting your community and get out of this analysis process, right? All right. Shasta, last word.
Thanks. See you later. That one about a million times better than
Hey, we should be less prepared.